Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out my channel today. Something's different about my setup. Um, Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite shows from 2023. I was going to say best show of the year, but I don't think it was. But I also can't tell you what I feel strongly about instead. I am bad at remembering what happened a month ago, let alone all the way back to January. But easily one of the most watchable and most fun shows of the year. So today we're going to talk about Blue Eye Samurai, which is a Netflix show. Technically not an anime because it wasn't in Japan, animated in Japan. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not like an anime expert by any stretch of the imagination. But Blue Eye Samurai is in kind of that style. It's set in Japan, 16th century Edo, Japan. It's kind of historical fiction, samurai revenge story. Like, hey, if you're already hooked by that, go watch it. I've been telling everybody, like, this is the most gorgeous show I've seen in a long time. Every single episode and like set and scene is artwork, like slap it on a poster. It's gorgeous. I'm super biased. One of the things that I love about it is like it's snowing a lot in this show, and I'm from the Midwest, and people be like, "Oh, bad weather or snow." Bleh. Like, there's a beauty of like snowfall. If you haven't experienced it, and you only can think of like that slushy gray snowplowed snow and salt or sand on the road or whatever. Like, that's not like being out in nature, watching the snowfall, hearing the quiet, feeling the like warmth and moisture in the air of snowfall. It's magical, and the show like really captures that. It's a gorgeous show. It's super well animated. There's lots of great voice actors in it. Maya Erskine, who's from I don't know. I know her from Pen 15 fame, which is a Hulu show. She's the main character. She voices Mizu, who's the main character, our titular blue-eyed samurai. George Takei, Randall Park, like a bunch of very talented voice actors are in the show, and so it's beautiful. It's well acted. I would say like the reason it's not my favorite show is maybe it doesn't do a lot with the story that it's telling, which is one of revenge, but like it's good. Like, what is Batman if not a revenge story? Batman's parents are murdered, so he's going to go on fight crime for the rest of his life. Like, and that's going to be his motivation. So like, it's a little tighter story than that. But the show does a lot of interesting things. I think the reason it's so popular is it's avoided a lot of tropes that shows like this fall into. And I think it does a lot of things that people are looking for in finding like not a diverse story that's told, but not like forced diversity, which I don't really have an issue with forced diversity. Like, it's good to create representation if it doesn't exist. Maybe not falsely, but like, no, like representation matters. These things are important. Portrayals in media matter. And so, yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So yeah, the show is basically set in this time where foreigners were not allowed in Japan. Being white was you were outlawed, and so this character who's born with white skin and blue eyes obviously had a white father when white people weren't supposed to be in Japan. And because of all this hardship and childhood trauma she has, because she's an outsider, because she's mixed race, and she is this lesser than in the culture that already is based on patriarchy and a bunch of other stuff. She's lesser than because she's female. She has a lot to overcome, and so her revenge story is she's going to kill her father. So there's only 4 white men in Japan at this time. They're all criminals. She's going to kill them all. I think the show kind of starts, it's hinted at, but with her tattoo that she's killed one already. So I'm not sure how many seasons we're going to get out of it. Some light spoilers are going to follow. But yeah, the show's beautiful, and it's really geared towards Mizu's revenge. Like, she's got all this trauma and she's gonna get revenge, and then she's gonna die trying, and that kind of comes up over and over again. Like, this is her all-consuming passion. Either she does this or she dies trying. And the cast of characters that she gets in support is wonderful. I think that's really where the story is. You know, I draw a lot of parallels with this show and Batman because it's kind of like that childhood trauma, lifelong quest. But Batman has Alfred, Batman gets Robin, Batman gets Batgirl, Batman gets Nightwing, Batman, like, he builds this family out because support is necessary. And when we have trauma, getting support from people is really important. And this show kind of highlights that, like, hey, this character needs support, even though she doesn't want support. She doesn't want to make connections. She doesn't want to be hurt again or hurt anyone else. and so she's keeps pushing people away, but people kind of keep trying to help her or support her or get swept up in her journey, and it's uplifting to see. There's a blind character who makes he's the sword maker. He's kind of her adopted father, although it's never, she hides that she's female. She hides that she's white, like as best she can. And we're kind of left with hints that he knows, but because it's culturally frowned upon, they're not going to act on it. Ringo is another character who comes up, who, because of a birth defect, doesn't have hands. And so we meet him he's a waiter at his father's restaurant, and he's a fun character. He's kind of the comedic relief, but like not as a punching bag, not because of his disability. Like he is different, but he's still very strong. And like, that's a theme in this show of, we can be different and still be strong. And again, I think that's a message that like right winger, fuck your feelings crowd, who are the biggest snowflakes of them all, like would dislike this show, I think, normally. And the reason it's done so well and it's so good with audiences is, one, like the main character is white. So if you got some racism that you haven't dealt with, it doesn't pop up in the show, even though the show essentially about how racism is bad and wrong, and harmful to people. And so like, yeah, it kind of avoids these tropes. It's set in a time period where they can tell this story and the white character is the main character, but it's not like yucky or gross because she's a female and she's the minority. She's grew up in an oppressive society. So it tells all these interesting trauma stories without, I think, triggering the people who would normally get triggered by it, and not in like a because they can relate to the oppression, but because they would normally be mad about the representation. So I don't know, like it's a very watchable show. Again, I think you can just watch it. I don't know, Samurai Champloo, like it kind of goes through like, here's a gorgeous fight scene. Like it's incredibly gory. If you don't like animated blood or you don't like blood in general, like this is not the show for you. It's highly violent. I like anime because it's cartoons, like I like it because it's fictional, so they can do things, so they can have a Kill Bill-esque fight scene every episode, and it isn't breaking the budget, and it isn't gratuitous. It might be gratuitous at some points, but like, I don't know, I want my anime to be over the top. I want it to be some aspects to be unrealistic. So she has a sword that's made out of a meteor, like that's unrealistic, like, right? The Batman trope that, again, go back to, like, Mizu's the best at everything. She's the best samurai. She becomes the best sword maker. She makes the sword that this master swords maker can't make this metal out of, and she does it. So like that little bit of the Batman, like let's set him up with like being the best of everything. Like Batman's the best martial artist and fighter and bare knuckle boxer, and also the smartest guy in the room. And he's incredible. Like, Batman has so much stuff. He's got all the things and he's the best at it. So, that aspect of this is always kind of like a little janky, I think, where it's like, to be the best sword maker and to be the best sword fighter would take like an insane number of hours of training in both those things. And like, I don't know, maybe. But again, like the show's not unbelievable for that reason any more than it's unbelievable for some of the other stuff. So Mizu goes on this quest, and she kind of Ringo finds her. She stands up to a bad dude in this restaurant, and then Ringo wants to go with her because she's different and she's broken. His words, not mine, but still strong. And so he wants to learn how to do that. Ringo's arc is delightful. Again, this character who was born without hands, is kind of treated poorly by his dad, is kind of treated poorly by everyone, and he wants to be strong. He talks about having the best soba noodles in the entire country, and he has this tiny little worldview, and he grew up in this tiny little village. And so he goes and travels someplace else and has someone else's soba and is like, this is the best soba I've ever had. And it like kind of rocks his worldview. And then that chef is like, I'm not even the best in this city. I'm second best. And like this rocks his world. And so like, I work with a lot of religious trauma, and I see people coming out of cults and high control religious groups. And this is the thing that people go through. Like you have this tiny little worldview, and when it expands, you have this, I think, this deconstruction that happens, almost this destruction that happens. And then what does the reconstruction look like? What do we do after we're kind of forced to come to grips with like, oh, that isn't true, or that isn't meaningful, or that it doesn't fit the way I thought. And so I love Ringo. Again, he's got some good lines in the show, and he's kind of the comedic balancing act in the show. In a fun way. He's a good character. He has his own arc, and like, again, a lot of the side characters have their own arcs and they're complex characters and they're fleshed out. So like I think the show's 8 episodes, an hour long each, and like it tells a lot of stories. There's the story of Taigen, who's the samurai that Mizu like defeats kind of offhandedly. Like she's not trying to steal his honor or take his place or beat him in a battle. She's just like, give me the information I want. And he's all like, honor and this dojo matters and this rank that I've achieved matters. And like she's just like, nah, brah. In a very cool scene of like, I'm taking off my training weights now again, which has been done before. Like I think it's in Dragon Ball Z, honestly. So it goes back pretty far in anime lore as like, now I'll fight you without my weights on. But it works. It's pro wrestling when someone rips their shirt or takes the straps of their singlet down. Like it's just cool. And so Taigen has his same as Ringo, like his world kind of crumbles and crashes down around him, and how does he rebuild it? And he has this similar but different story to Mizu then of what's my revenge story look like? I have to beat you to reclaim my honor. We have the character Akemi, who's the daughter of a wealthy kind of leader in, I don't know if he's leader in the government, but like he's a big deal. He's very wealthy, and so her getting married is a big deal, and she's going to marry Taigen, and then Taigen's defeated. So like her whole story is again interesting. A lot of these characters where like you can see the way that systemic oppression is hurting people, and they are still maintaining their own kind of meaning making, their own honor, their own strength. Like there's several times where the prostitutes throughout the country play into the storyline, and like it's horrific, right? Like they're being abused, they're being taken advantage of. The patriarchy is strong, so they don't have rights, they don't have the ability to defend themselves, and yet they build this community and they connect and look out for each other. And so I think I resonate really strongly with like kind of that band of misfits bonding together. And so again, these characters who are oppressed, these characters who are being harmed by this systemic overculture, are working to still support each other and take care of each other. And I think that story is really beautiful, even when, I don't know, I was raised Christian. So like, right, you think of prostitution being like bad and dirty, like how dare those people? And like now as somebody who's deconstructed and also has worked in mental health for years, like it's highly supportive of sex workers, and like these people have rights and they're humans, and it's one of the oldest jobs in history because people like sex. And so like, how do we honor these people? Like they're not in the show, they're not tropey, they're complex characters. They're not the butt of a joke. They're like characters you're rooting for. And so I think that's really delightful. I think that's really wonderful to see the story told in a way of like these oppressed minority groups who are looking out for each other and building community and like building meaning and creating space for each other within this highly toxic culture, this top-down culture where like there are clear hierarchies, there are clear social classes, there are clear gender norms, and with all these characters who kind of challenge those things. And so yeah, Blue-Eyed Samurai, it's gorgeous. I think there's a lot in it that is interesting from a mental health perspective, as far as like overcoming oppression, working through trauma. It's the story's not done, you know, by season 1. It just got renewed, so I wasn't sure if I was going to do a review of it, honestly, because Netflix cancels so many of the shows after 1 season. What a good year for Netflix anime too. Like Pluto is another anime that came out that I probably won't do a review of, but like an hour-long anime, just delightful, really good. Netflix has had some good anime, Devilman Crybaby a couple of years ago. So like, yeah, good year for that. It's been highly reviewed to be very good. It's just gorgeous. Like that's been my big selling point when I talk to anybody about Blue-Eyed Samurai. Is like it's so well drawn. Like it's just put it on your screen and like pause it and take in the artwork because it's gorgeous. And it's a good story on top of it. Again, it's maybe not, it's nuanced, but it's not like, you know, it's a revenge story. It's this delightful band of misfits overthrowing, like that's what we want. That's Braveheart. Braveheart's a bad example because of the Mel Gibson movie. Braveheart, the actual William Wallace, the historical character, not the highly historically made up, basically fiction movie. Although as a youngster, I very much enjoyed the movie. I still enjoyed the movie if you view it as historical fiction and not as anything close to what really happened. But yeah, and you know too, like I was raised parochial school, so didn't learn about other cultures. So like Edo Japan, something just kind of a blank slate. Like my ADHD brain went on Wikipedia and learned a bunch of stuff. So like again, I like the setting. The show's really good. It speaks to a lot of like post-traumatic growth. How do we recover from these things? How do we build community and support these things? How do people who have different abilities or who have different bodies or look different or whatever, how do we create space for them? How do they make their own meaning, and how can other people around them support that meaning making? So I think it's a lot of really good stuff, and you can have it on and pop some popcorn and just enjoy the artwork. I think you can have it on as an action show, as a revenge story, as the Die Hard type, like this shouldn't work and this person's going to keep overcoming. So yeah, Blue Eye Samurai, like 2 thumbs up. Like I said, it's in the conversation for I think most enjoyed show of mine, easiest to watch because it's so beautiful and it's a good story where you just want to keep watching it, even though it's hour-long episode. You're gonna binge it a little bit, at least a couple episodes here or there, see what happens. So it's a good story. Some great characters. Ringo's great. Mizu's great. Abijah Fowler, who's kind of our bad guy in season 1. Like that's such a good name for a character. And again, just the whole thing is beautiful to look at. Blue Eye Samurai. So I give it 2 thumbs up. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. My wife is not someone who watches anime, and I got her to watch episode 1 at least so far. I don't know if we're gonna go back to it, but she's not as big of a fan of the gory stuff as I am. But just it's a gorgeous show, a good story, good representation. So a lot of things to like in it. So yeah, go check out Blue Eye Samurai. Strong recommend from me. And thanks for stopping by and checking out my channel. I love talking about mental health, big advocate for breaking down stigmas, and everybody needs help with their mental health. So you can check out some of my other stuff. I have a podcast called Your Therapist Needs Therapy. I post those episodes on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, subscribe, it helps. I go back and forth on like content creation and some of these things versus like what I consider my real job, which is therapy, and my, I think, much more meaningful job. But it's one of those things where I'm trying to kind of reframe how I view some of this media stuff. For how do I talk about mental health? How do I advocate for the things that I advocate for in my professional life to a wider audience? Arguably more people listen to my podcast every week than I would ever see in therapy in a week. So I'm trying to kind of reconceptualize that stuff. So likes and comments and people who say, hey, we want to review this, all that stuff matters. It helps me personally, but it also helps people find good content that is pro mental health and is destigmatizing some of this mental health work. So that's my plug. Like, subscribe, drop down in the comments. I'm always looking for new content ideas. I love when people tell me like, hey, check out this thing. If it's not just something that I know about off the top of my head or something that I enjoy, I really do like to break down and analyze other people's stuff. So like, subscribe, comment, find my other stuff, wellnesswithjared.com. I'm around. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel. Peace.